the Mod Pod by Modality Systems.
Welcome to the Mod Pod, the podcast from Modality. Mod Pod will take an informal but informed look at the world of Microsoft technologies and the modern workplace. Episodes will be released fortnightly, and a changing team of 3 people will each bring a chosen topic for discussion, all unscripted and unrehearsed. Whether it's security and governance, to the world of operations, from Azure CSP through to the etiquette in Teams. We'll be looking at new ways of working, new technologies, and business trends. We will cover anything and everything. Suitable for the C-suite, techies, or anybody wanting to navigate the new working world. If you want us to talk about a particular topic, please get in touch at themodpod@modalitysystems.com. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Mod Pod. I'm Pete Basie, Head of Technical Services.
I'm Lindsay Ansell, I'm Customer Success Manager.
And I'm Bob Dalton, I'm Director of Global Managed Services.
Great, good names, good titles. So we'll crack on with topic number 1. This is my topic for today. We have been in lockdown for about 12 months. The lockdown triggered an awful lot of companies to fire up teams very, very quickly. So 12 months in, are people aware of really what's going on under the hood? If they are they doing anything about it? Is it a complete mess? What are we seeing? So I'll start. I think there are an awful lot of organizations out here who really don't understand what's going on in their organization. There are tools from Microsoft, there are tools from us, which will tell you how many teams are out there, how many are being created, and people are cracking on and working away absolutely, without issue. But I do wonder whether or not they're aware of security holes, what's being shared, who's being shared, where they've got duplicate teams, have they got information in one team that should be in a different team, what's happened to all the guests that have been added by various people, etc. And I think there are potentially, playing the whole fear game here, quite a few surprises to come, probably over the next sort of 6 to 12 months as people start to get to grips with their security and their compliance and all that sort of stuff. I think it's actually going to be quite a mess. I don't know that people really have a handle on what's going on here. Thoughts?
I think that's a really easy trap to fall into when you turn on something like Teams. I think, speaking from experience, if I'm allowed to say this, of when
you created problems for yourself.
Yes, I've created loads of mess. But because we were obviously early adopters, right, of Microsoft Teams at Modality, and I think everyone would be honest and say that we found ourselves in a bit of a mess a year on from that. And that wasn't obviously around COVID. That was a while ago now, and luckily we've managed to unmess ourselves a bit. But yeah, I think it's a really easy route to go down, because everyone goes off with this new tool and they develop their own Teams processes around Teams, too many Teams. But so, you can easily recreate business silos, which is probably not what you want. And then you have to sort of go back a step and sort of refine a whole company-wide approach, which is what we ended up doing, rather than having all of these silos of like pockets of people using Teams this way and pockets of people using Teams that way, and like business processes not necessarily linking up together in a sensible way. I think the business process side will be definitely something that companies are going to need to revisit, because there will be these little kind of breakout groups who are going, oh yeah, well, Teams is working really well for us in this way, but it's not necessarily of benefit to the whole company and their customers. So yeah, apart from the obvious ones of like, where are you storing all your documents, and did you know this guest has access to all of these things that are confidential?
Because I think one of the sort of it's almost turned into a down or potential downfall is that when you deliver projects from the sort of the traditional project point of view, and you're going to build something, you're going to put it in, you're going to get configured, and you're going to wrap all your security and governance around and work out what's going to sit where. The ease of turning on Teams, and combine that with the speed with which people have done, I think there's been a whole bundle over here that's just been completely missed.
Yeah, well, that's the heart of it, Pete, isn't it? I mean, if you'd have look at the sizable customers that we've got who've done this, who've just switched it on and moved, and they've done that in a week or 2 weeks. You know, they've taken thousands and thousands of people from being office-based workers to home-based workers. Now, this is in a project that in normal times they'd have had committees deciding around for months. They'd have then launched the project. They'd have put a timescale of 18 months. They'd have delivered it in 3 years, and even then they wouldn't have finished it. And all that time, there'd have been governance and security people saying yes, but all the way through. And in this instance, in a matter of a fortnight, in many cases, significant companies have gone, right, you have to work from home. We need to find a way of doing it. Bang, just make it happen. And that's bound to have left. You know, gradually, as things get back to normal, you can just imagine all those governance people, all those process people, all those compliance people are going to be going, excuse me,
hang on.
When we did that, when you get batting me back and saying, no, shut up, it's too important. Just
I was going to say they're going to come in with an "I told you so" badge, aren't they?
Yeah.
Almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed. And it's not a dynamic. I mean, I've been in the IT industry a lot of years, and it's not a project dynamic that I've seen at this scale ever. You know, I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like this, and therefore, I'm not sure anyone's in a position to say, oh yes, I know exactly what's going to happen as all this starts to unravel and settle down, and we get back to whether that's normal or this horrendous new normal phrase. You know, I don't think we can have anyone who can definitively say this is what's going to occur, because there are stones going to be lifted all over the shop.
Now, is it going to be a case though of the compliance people and the governance people come back in and go, we need to have a look at this, or is it going to be created by pain first, as in, oh, hang on, they've got access to this information they shouldn't have? What do you reckon?
Almost both. Almost certainly both. I think it's going to be how lucky do you feel, punk? You know, it's
3 minutes in and we've got to the Dirty Harry already.
I think a few organisations are going to maybe uncover issues, and they're going to say, "Good grief! Thank heavens that the authorities didn't spot that gaping hole in our compliance, because we could have been in serious trouble. Luckily, we fixed it first." Let's watch the news. There's bound to be some incidents over the next 12 or 18 months where some authority says this organisation, in a rush to do homework as a result of COVID, have breached all kinds of compliance issues. I think it's almost inevitable.
Because I think we are still, quite surprisingly so, I think we're still in a phase where organisations who are slightly behind the ones that just went turn it on, they are still pushing it out quite rapidly. And most people have done it to some extent, but we're still seeing organisations now. And I think there's, out of the last 12 months of conversations, I would say I've come across one organisation who has said, we're just going to stick and do it bit by bit, and we're going to make sure the governance is right before we turn anything else on. I think that's quite rare, I think.
No, it is. I mean, I think it's interesting looking at the sort of futures for those organisations that haven't, gone whole hog and are doing the tidy up piece afterwards. I find it's really hard to consider any IT director, any CIO, even if it's a business that's got through this pretty much unscathed. They've been key industry or suppliers. They've had to have some site workers and people who are visiting clients and all those kind of good things. For an IT director or CIO not to put into place some kind of tooling, system, process, some scenario that would allow them to work remotely as a business, because when the next big thing comes along, because this has been dealing with a DR issue on this business continuity problem of this scale is unprecedented. No one's had to do this before.
No.
So, if you don't invest and don't consider this and don't plan for this in the future, for being something else, maybe not a pandemic, maybe some kind of environmental catastrophe. Who's going to genuinely?
You're a ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
But who's going to be the brave guy that sits there and say, no, that's not going to happen. We don't need to plan for that. The chances are infinitesimally small. Well, suddenly we've been hit with something that is real, and the consequences have been so dramatic. I think even if we'd been told 6 months in advance there's going to be a pandemic,
Yeah, still
I
wouldn't
don't
be
think we'd
prepared.
have reacted to the level we've had to react. I think we'd
No,
have
I think that's
assumed
a really
something
good
much softer.
point, because if you'd have been told in advance this was going to happen, you wouldn't know what to plan for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh, everyone's going to be able to work from home. Okay, cool. But I don't think anybody sort of foresaw, the actual sort of shutting down and no cars on the road, no this, no that, and obviously the flip side's the mental side. I mean, well, mental and physical. I mean, we've obviously got things happening within our organization, and we're, in the scheme of things, not the biggest company out there. So I mean, it must be pretty big, but we're digressing off of whatever the topic. But
Well, on a on a positive note around all of that, it sort of opens up the discussion massively about work and working hours and flexible working, and sort of treating employees as humans with lives rather than just employees. Like, everyone's had to get on board with each other's differing schedules a little bit more, and be a little bit kinder to each other, and I feel like that's something I hope is going to continue, and when things do go back to normal, if they ever do, or whatever this new normal is, like, employers are going to have a hard time convincing people that they need to be in an office and that they can't work from home, I think. So
the whole of it's not effective for people to work from home, is, in a lot of cases, has been chucked right out the window, hasn't it? Because there are organisations out there, and we're not talking obviously about physical ones that depend on footfall and manufacturing and that kind of thing, but you look at the main sort of traditionally office-based functions, and they're still able to perform their jobs. And so that argument's been blown out the window. I mean, I think off the back of this, we're probably not going to be encouraging our consultants and delivery teams to be going straight back into the way they were working, because that takes out 2, 3, 4 hours of the working day, or adds 2, 3, 4 hours onto it. So I think, if we do fall back into normal, it's probably a bit of a missed opportunity.
Yeah, definitely would have missed a trick. I think
there is good to come out of the mess, I guess, but it's sometimes difficult to see it, I think, if depending on how much of the mess you're in, isn't it?
I mean, I was hugely impressed. Let's bring it back into the bits that we've observed directly. I was hugely impressed at our own organisation's ability to transform almost overnight to being 100% home workers, and that wasn't just restricted to operations like the US and the UK, which are very used to home working, but for our colleagues in Malaysia, where it was very much an office-based culture. I mean, home working was absolutely an exception. That was when you had extreme childcare issues, or you were going to the dentist or whatever. It just wasn't part of the daily grind, was to work from home. And suddenly, almost overnight, that whole team got dispersed, and pretty much without exception, I don't think a single customer noticed. Aside from a strange background, no one spotted it. So I think that was dramatic. I think for me, on the personal level, we're all used to, you form relationships at work. You get to know certain people, go and play round of golf with them. They've got so many kids and all this kind of good stuff. So I think at a certain level, traditionally, in an office environment, you get to know a fair amount about a few people. What I found as a result of this 12 months of lockdown and teams working is that I now know a pretty good amount about loads and loads of people. I know that they've got cats or dogs or babies, and what the baby looks like, and Yeah, I've waved at Elias in Malaysia, and it's been really interesting to just get that sort of insight into people's lives, to the extent that they want you to know about it. And it's so it's been not as much as the kind of in-depth colleague stroke friendship you get when you almost become that friends and colleagues boundary gets to blur. But certainly a greater in-depth knowledge about people's lives and what goes on. And I'm, as I indeed have shared with many others, with Ellis interrupting every call that I pretty much had. I think he's asleep now. We're probably okay.
Cool. So yeah, I think that's probably good for our first topic. I think to summarize, there's been a lot that could come out of it, but it definitely feels like there's going to be a period coming up in the next 6 to 12 months, whatever it is, where there's going to be a bit of clearing up to do, and maybe a little bit of pain experienced by a few organizations. But hopefully people can take this and have a listen and go, yeah, actually, you know what, maybe we need to do something about this sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and luckily we're ideally placed to help, Pete. Good point.
Oh, good plug. Right, on to topic 2.
So my topic for today was been a lot of activity around recruitment this year for some backfill and powering our growth that we've had. So lots and lots of recruitment going on, and because of the initiative from group around reviews and objective setting for next year, we're back on the sort of personal development for our teams again. So I've been thinking a lot about how we hire people and where they end up and so on. And I've been chewing around this whole concept of attitude and aptitude as being, is that the real criteria by which we should hire people? Typically, we put out a job description and it'll say somewhere in there, typical candidate will have X number of years doing this and certain number of years doing this, and will have run teams of 10 people or more, and will have these badges. They'll definitely have all these technical badges. And so many times in my career, I've had people that match exactly that specification. You bring them in and they're absolutely train wrecks. Just very difficult people to work with. Have no real interest in what they've actually been doing for the last 10 years. That someone's just pushed them down that career path, and they've got a CV to die for, but end up being really usually adequate because they do tick all the boxes. So they can, yes, they can do the job, but not necessarily automatic the sort of superstar that you want. And conversely, in admittedly my long and varied career, I've hired some people, not quite on a whim, but you've met them, you've ignored the CV because it was entirely inappropriate. For some reason, they've got through the screening process. And I go back to hiring network engineers back in the day, and there were two that particularly stood out to me. One had been running his own courier business, and before that had been working in courier jobs and manual labour and all kinds of things. So a bright bloke, had set his own business up, become quite successful, but he decided he wanted to get back into technology. And another guy who was a technician on the Dartford River crossing, so spent his life working shifts, climbing up power poles, fixing lighting gantries and arrays and all these kind of good things. Not necessarily someone you think was totally equipped for the new world of Cisco voice over IP, which is flavor of the month at the time. And yet those two individuals, as an example, turned out to be absolutely stellar at their job. They had such hunger, they had such an ability to communicate with customers and with colleagues, and to get people on board, to problem solve. They became absolutely stellar. So I wonder if when we hire people, if we put too much store by badges and tickets, because that sort of thing you can teach people. Ultimately, a bit of investment in training, you can teach those things. What you can't teach is those natural attitude and aptitude skills that we tend to overlook. And just briefly, what you end up with, I think, if you have a program of just doing that, just hiring by badge and hiring by CV, you end up with a whole bunch of people who are actually mismatched and ill-equipped for the job they're doing. And you have to have a big program of playing them back in position. So find out what they actually do well, what their skills actually, their natural innate skills equipment for, and then reposition them into something that, you know, where they can give their best rather than pushing against the boundaries all the time. So that's just been, you know, stirring around my head as we're trying to do all this hiring.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing a lot of hiring as well, and I think you're absolutely right. There are loads of really well certified people out there, but you know, going back across the years, I've met loads of really well certified people who I wouldn't want anywhere near my business, and it's difficult to pick it apart because from a technical perspective, they need a certain amount of technical skills to be able to do the fundamentals of what we're asking them to. But more and more that, you know, as I sort of gone through the working world, I find that the attitude and aptitude of the person becomes more and more important, especially when you're building, you know, like a proper team culture, and you know, you want everybody to work together. You've got to have that kind of personality who fits in and sees that the values that we have around, you know, customer is the absolute priority. We do the always the best design for the situation, etc. They've got to have that same kind of ethic backing them in, and you can't teach somebody that kind of thing very easily. I think, you know, we mentioned it the other day. There's a short clip of Simon Sinek, and he's talking about how you know, the US Navy SEALs pick their team, and there's basically performance versus trust. And you know, high performing, high trust person is your absolute, you know, perfect solution. Nobody wants the low performing, untrustworthy person, which is absolutely fine. But you know, from the remaining sort of zone that's sort of left of it, they will always take the trust and the aptitude over the performance, because that's what's going to, you know, help build your cohesive team. And I think it's absolutely bang on. Not that we're building a crack squad of military personnel here, obviously, just as a side note, but
far more important than that, Pete. So
yeah,
I mean,
I think it is.
Yeah,
But
and
how long
sorry,
does it
Mandy.
take? How long does it take to get a feel for that in a person? Because I know in my personal life, I have friends who I would absolutely trust down to the ground and are really intelligent people, but their social skills are not the best, and so they don't interview well at all, and they really struggle in an interview situation because they can't kind of sort of bring across what they need to. But it's a real shame, because I know from knowing them in personal life that they would be great for that job. So how long do you give someone to sort of give off the right vibe?
Yeah, I think you tend to get a feel very, very quickly, because you can nearly always see past nerves. You can tell when somebody's nervous, or they're just sort of, you know, oh, I don't know, should I be saying the right thing? And I think one of the skills in interviewing is just actually putting people at ease. You know, I mean, ultimately, yes, you could do a big panel interview and have people sitting there grilling them. You know, that's not the real world, though, is it? You know, I mean, if I'm like this, then I should be like this on an interview. I don't see why I should change things. So I think if you make people relax a little bit, take the pressure off them, tell a joke, you know, or whatever it is, let your dog or cat wander into screenshot. We're human, right? It doesn't make any difference. But yeah, I think it's a very quick thing. You pick up very, very quickly whether or not you'd want to work with this person.
Yeah, and I think that's the management superpower, isn't it? Is being able to get under the skin of people quite quickly and pick up the messages, and don't necessarily jump to a conclusion on one particular trait. It just let it come out of them. I guess it's part of that whole debate around intelligence and emotional intelligence, the IQ EQ debate. And managers who are very, very good tend to have high EQ. I think they have that high empathy score. They can get a sense of how someone is. People can be massively effective and efficient, and yet find it very hard to tap into the drivers and emotions of the people sat across from them. So
Yeah.
I think that's where really, really good managers have that ability to quickly latch on. Yeah, I mean, you're right, Lindsay. It's a bit of a challenge because you can't take 2 or 3 weeks to know someone typically, and really get under their skin and see how they operate in different environments, unless you go through one of these hugely complex recruitment processes. You'll see organizations. I know Unilever, they hired my stepson Jamie on this modern apprenticeship a few years back, and they went through a whole stage of processes of quick form that you had to fill out, then 2 or 3 telephone interviews, and then I think 3 workshops where they spent whole days doing things and absolutely scientifically drilled under the skin. Ended up with 5,000 applicants and 40 placements. So you can go through that, but who has the time and the investment capability to go through that kind of process? It's just not possible. So I think it becomes a gut feel. And you need to have people who have that ability to draw it out quite quickly. I think there's no real escape from that.
Yeah, and I think that the last thing for me was my brother this was years ago, went through an interview process, and I remember they went through the standard 2 interviews, whatever it was, and I think there was a 3rd one so they could meet somebody else. And then at some point they turned around and said, "Oh, could we just do one more?" And he was like, "Well, no, if you haven't decided that you like me now, sorry, I'm out." And I think that's an absolutely brilliant approach. Is that relationship's got to be 2 ways. It's all very well us trying to put someone get under the skin. I'm a bit worried that getting under the skin is in your job description or something, Bob. But you've got to go through that process. But likewise, I would say if somebody's coming to an interview with us, if they think I'm a complete idiot, they've got to have the confidence to go, "Yeah, I'm not sure I want. Why would I go and work for him?" Yeah. So which is fine. I don't think I'm an idiot. I don't know, it might be, but that's beside the by. Brilliant.
No comment.
Okay. Shall we move to topic number 3?
Absolutely.
Topic number 3. So my topic is etiquette in Microsoft Teams, and whether it's something that does exist or should exist or will exist or could exist. So we have etiquette in everyday life, right? You hold a door open for somebody, you say bless you when they sneeze, like all of that stuff is a given. But I feel like there's a lot of behaviors that go on where people are interacting with each other on Microsoft Teams where I don't know, I just think some of it is polite and then some of it is not polite, and I think that's part of a bit of some of the mess of Microsoft Teams actually is like, do people know, like there's no agreed sort of script as to how you interact with people on there. Particularly I think the move away from Skype for Business and presence-based communication. So you could always see when somebody was available, when they were busy, when they were in a meeting. You can still see that now, but for direct chat it's all persistent, so you just kind of pick up a conversation where you left off anyway. So actually, if is it appropriate to reach out to someone even though you can see that they're on a call, because the chat's persistent and they can read it whenever they're free and it doesn't particularly matter to you when they pick it up. There's a whole presence thing, and then there's also these people who just ping you a message saying hi with nothing else.
Don't yeah.
And if you are on a call and they ping you hi and you don't respond for half an hour, you've just then got this random hi.
I've got 2 questions for you.
Go
One,
on.
can I treat this as therapy?
Yes.
2, am I allowed to swear profusely?
No.
Certainly yes to the first.
But but I think but it's unfair though, isn't it? Because there's no rules around this yet. Like nobody does it. Is it something that has to be set on an organizational level? Does do the CEOs of companies need to say we need to be doing this and this in Teams, or is it something that's going to evolve over time, or do you just have to tell people, look, it really gets my goat when you just say hi and nothing else, so don't bloody well
That's-
do it.
So that's it. I don't think you'd get away with it as being a company directive. For me, I there are certain things that absolutely wind me up, and if either of you two start doing it off the back of this, there'll be repercussions. But the high bit and then wandering off absolutely drives me up. It's like when voicemail came out and people would leave. You'd have your answer machine at home, or you'd have your voicemail on your phone, and they go, "Can you give me a call?" No, tell me what it's about. Because all you're doing is asking me to ring you back, and that's fine, but you could have just rung at another time. So I think there are absolute givens like that. If you've not got the time to actually talk to somebody, occasionally, yes, you're going to get distracted or diverted onto something else. But generally, if you're going to make contact with someone, and whatever it is. I don't think Microsoft have helped themselves with the interrupting a phone call. So presence for me is real world, not what it says on the tin. Green, yeah, absolutely fine. Ping me, call me, don't mind. Away, well, if I'm away, I am typically away from my desk. So yeah, leave me a message when I get back. I don't mind. It's the red ones, I think, that are contentious, because it used to be quite clear that you were in a call. Now it's just a red button. You have to hover over it to say you're in a call. The red, I think, is if you can see they're not on a call, it's kind of fair game. I'll send them a message. Are you free to talk, or can you just answer me this question when you got a moment, whatever it is. I think that's okay. But if you're in a call, no, don't. So I think the fact that it's been de-emphasized, the fact that somebody's on a call, you almost need something to go, I'm sending a message to someone who's on a call. They're in a call. Do you want to carry on? I think there needs to be some sort of prompt, because that doesn't happen in my mind.
I mean, it's tricky if you try and transpose this back into an office environment. You've got, is just the red light, is that the equivalent of someone just being head down over a document? And you could come on and say, just when you've got a second, rather than someone sat there on a telephone call when you probably wouldn't seek to interrupt them. It's a
That's quite a good analogy, actually, isn't it? If they're on the phone, would you walk up and go, "Sorry, you got a minute"?
Yeah.
Yeah, which you clearly wouldn't.
Would you?
But if they were just occupied doing stuff, then
Yeah.
then you may well. And it's a bit like someone being in a meeting room, I suppose. We're on a meeting here. Would someone barge in and say, "Are you busy, Pete?" When you clearly obviously are, if you're in a meeting. It's interesting, and
That does happen.
yeah, and could and should you? And it would do one of the sort of trick links into the next point. Does it vary depending on who you're applying it to? Because there are certain people that I work with every single day. I'll talk to 10, 15 times a day, and I'd feel fairly comfortable with a number of those to say, I see they're busy, but I'll just say, no rush, but could you get back to me as soon as you're free, and just leave it at that. And that's I want to register the fact that when they've got a minute. Now there's other people that I probably wouldn't do that with, because I'd feel maybe I'll just wait until I can see that they're absolutely free, or even worse, I'll drop them an email and ask them to come back to me.
I think it's interesting, actually, because I think one of the key things for me is if I'm quite good at, if somebody does something like that, like interrupting or whatever it is, I'll go back to them and go, no, if I'm in a call, I'm in a call, or whatever it is that's annoyed me, and I think you have to do that. But I do guess there's probably a whole group of people who feel that they probably need to respond because they've got a message from their manager or their so-and-so, and it'd be interesting to know whether or not that actually puts the sort of the pressure levels up on them to, oh gosh, because I mean, it was probably, it's chat now, but of course it used to be instant messaging, isn't it? It's instant, you must deal with it straight away. Or maybe you could just choose to wait until it was convenient for you.
But we've built a notification obsession culture, haven't we? Like ping, ping, ping. Oh, I should get onto this because I've made a noise and done a flashy light, and it's clearly important because it's
we get nagged
right
by
up
the
on
tech,
this.
don't we?
Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting. When you were saying that, Pete, I was I was thinking there's probably people at peer level and above who I'd quite freely interrupt.
Yeah.
On a polite way, and says, because this is quite important. I need to get hold of you as soon as you're free. I think instinctively, and it didn't really occur to me until you've said that. But if it's a more junior body, because I've got a posh job title.
It's got global in the world, isn't it?
Dead posh that is. But I'd be very conscious about interrupting someone who is perceived to be far more junior, because I wouldn't want them to feel under pressure to drop what they're doing and come back to me because it's the head of global managed services, rather than it's Bob. And I remember years and years ago when I was MD of a services business, and my PA at the time, Julie, told me off because we'd have new starters come in, green as grass, early 20s, and very keen to impress, nice new suit and all that kind of stuff. And I go and have a chat to them on the first day, sit on the end of the desk, she said, "Look, you're scaring the hell out of them." They've been told that bloke over there in that corner office is the MD. And next thing you know, you come and sat on their desk. Give them a break. Let's break them gently. And I think you do have to have a sense that if you've got an implied senior position, and you'd come under the same bracket, Pete, and you, Lindsay, because you're just important, that you can, I think, be seen to be putting pressure on more junior members of the team, because they see the job title and they think they've got to jump and drop everything.
I think I'm just seem to be annoying.
I don't want to say anything.
No.
Even if you have a set of rules, I think I would apply them very differently across the team.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that you talked about is the basic politesse. Do you say good morning to everyone, or do you carry on conversations? And I've got, if I look through the chats I've got down the side of my Teams client, it's a real mishmash. There will be people that I haven't spoken to for a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, straight back in off the back of the conversation that we last had. No airs, no graces, no nothing. There's other people in the organisation who I know will start with the "How are you? I'm fine. What have you been up to? I haven't been up to." And I don't really mind it everywhere, either way. But I do find the sort of the full conversation bit. It's like, well, if you want to have a conversation with me, just put in a call. I'm happy to either way. I really don't mind. But it is I think it is a real mishmash of how people do it. I don't think you'll ever get it lined up.
No, because people are so different, aren't they? Like, I found myself at the moment, something that I'm doing that is annoying myself. I will.
You're annoying yourself.
I'm annoying myself, yeah. So if somebody answers my question on chat or in a channel, I'll do a little thumbs up as a sort of thank you, acknowledgement, whatever. But then I'll also type a message underneath saying thank you. And then I think, well, hang on, that's a waste of time, because they'll have seen my little thumbs up. So but then I worry that it's not enough of a gratitude. I think I have to vocalize the thank you.
You should add a GIF and follow up with an email, I think.
Yeah.
It's really weird, right? It's like I used to really, people who just send emails in reply saying, "Oh, thank you." But usually I would have been a bit like, "Oh, well, there was no need for that, really."
So
I've already forgotten. I've already forgotten that I've done that thing, so there's no thank you necessary. I'm just doing my job, and now I'm doing it myself in Teams channels because I don't know what the rules are.
Next time Lindsay does something for you, send flowers. I think that's
absolutely, yes. I'm so glad we aren't going down the email route, because that would just be my introduction to the topic would actually just be 10 minutes of you not getting a word in edgeways with me just going scourge of my life. So Teams is way better, but I think that we could do a lot more on that, I think. Cool. Well, I think we're done.
Excellent.
Thanks very much, folks.
Been a pleasure.
We'll
and
be
emotional.
Back for episode 2. Has it been emotional?
Absolutely.
Is that your emotional face?
Yeah, it's the same face.
Excellent. Fair enough. Brilliant.
Pete.
Thank you very much, both.
Good
Cheers,
job.
cheers, guys.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. And remember, if you want us to talk about anything in particular in a future episode, then please get in touch at themodpod@modalitysystems.com. We'll be back in a fortnight with the next episode. Take care, stay safe, and you know where to find us. modalitysystems.com.
The Mod Pod by Modality Systems.